Rob, I'm glad you're here. I hadn't seen you yet today. Come on up, Rob. Everybody, Rob DiCaterino of Square. Next up, Mercedes Castaneda of Fabletics Men. It's good to see you. Angela Essence, come on up, please. Where is Hunter? Come on up, Hunter. We're going to try to fix it in post. I want to set the stage for the conversation today a little bit. If creative production for e-commerce is considered sometimes a black hole from the perspective of the rest of the company, I think post-production is probably the black hole within the black hole. It seems like kind of a magic thing that you put images into and then something happens and images come out, and either they're amazing or they need more work and they go back into the black hole. This panel today is an opportunity for some experts in post-production in e-commerce to tell the rest of you in the room what they need to do their jobs better and faster and more efficient. And so I hope that you're listening to them because, in my opinion, post-production is a team that can be often put upon. They live between two very different worlds, between the e-com and web teams that use the images and the teams that shoot the images. And as a longtime product photographer, I can tell you that the teams that shoot the images are stubborn and egotistical. And I will stand by that. So, I gotta get my phone out. I apologize, it's very unprofessional, but I have a horrible memory. And so I gotta refer to our outline that we came up with for this conversation. I want to kind of start at the beginning, and it is my opinion based on my experience that post-production teams need to be involved much earlier in the process. So for this first kind of topic to open up this roundtable, I'm going to look to Rob, and we're going to talk about how important is it for post-production teams to be involved all the way up through pre-production? What kind of things can you learn in pre-production that will make your teams do their jobs better?
It's very important.
Done. Check.
Yeah, I mean, so you have your whole studio team, the producers, the photographers, the stylists, the scouts. There's also the retouching team. So they are part of the studio team. So why would you exclude them? When you include the retouching team in those pre-pro conversations, right, in that phase of the project, the planning, the retouching team can offer insights into the planning that the other teams can't. You're planning equipment, so what lenses do we need, what lighting setup, whatever. Well, the retoucher can provide what resolution do we need, what color space do we need, what's the how much padding and what's the file naming convention, and if we're shooting ready to wear clothing, we need returns, right, for the inside of the shirt or the coat or whatever. So not only do we need the return, but here's a good way to shoot the return so that we can comp it in efficiently and realistically. So all of those, the retoucher can offer perspective. They're not being pains in the butt. They're offering those insights into that phase of the studio production.
Absolutely, and you mentioned like technical specifications obviously is an important one. That's something that can easily derail a production because it was a simple thing that you missed, some minor technical specification about an image. But the other thing is that you can the post-production teams can use information from the e-com or even marketing teams on the way that some of these images are going to be used or want to be used to inform more of the pre-production process. Hunter, your thoughts on that? Because you work for, you're with Suna.
Correct.
Which is a commercial studio provider, is that correct?
Yeah, we provide fast casual content for everybody.
And so you have, this is a conversation that your team is constantly having. Mm-hmm. Every new client of yours that comes on, you need to be talking about what are we shooting, how are we shooting it, how's it going to be used, what kind of files do you need to be delivered. Post-production is a vitally important part of that, and not for the least reason of which is how are we going to be reusing images potentially. tell me a little bit about on your team, the kinds of things that you need to find out from your clients for post-production in order to make sure that you're delivering exactly the right thing to your customers.
I mean, that's huge. Keeping an open line of communication with our clients is probably one of the biggest factors in post-production. At Suno, the post-production staff doesn't keep an open line directly, but we have people who do that for us. And I mean, we need to know if there's going to be graphics involved. We need to know what their background colors, their hex codes are going to be. Every brand has a very specific look and style. And at Suna in particular, our aim is to achieve that brand's style. So on the front end, having access to brand guides, having access to their hex codes, to their style guides, it's very important. One of the major challenges that we faced in the very beginning was, kind of just, the photographers would just hand over the shots and be like, here you go. We're fully remote, so that's a challenge, right? We're not with the photographers, we're not with the clients. So we started really kind of diving into the process and being like, okay, well, like if there's going to be this symbiotic relationship at every single step of the process, we need to have the information on the front end, in the middle, and on the back. So keeping it consistent throughout the entire process is vital for the post-production process, absolutely.
Excellent. No rebuttal. A perfect answer. Mercedes.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll tell my pants story later in the panel if you're going to insist on doing it. Too many people are very sick of it. I want to talk a little bit about now a different sort of feedback loop. Obviously, we just spent some time talking about information that's kind of like stacked at the front of the production process. One of the things, and I heard at least one person say this yesterday at the Henry Stewart event, that we tend to be retouchers, photographers, everybody in the creative operations world tends to pride themselves on problem solving. It comes from a long history in creative production of constantly putting out fires and solving problems to keep production moving. Yes, sometimes it is easier to just fix it than it is to go to the source. But should we do that, or should we maintain that open feedback loop to try to fix things at the source so that you're not constantly getting the same mistakes over and over again?
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like the best example I can give for this, I'm sorry if you guys heard it already, but it's the same example I gave at the last flow event. But even the example of that basketball, we had this creative direction, this creative vision to shoot this kind of like vintage looking photo shoot once for one of our Fabletics shoots. And we had this vintage basketball, super cool in theory. It was, super cool creative brief, creative idea. But once we shot it, the model's holding this vintage looking basketball. It really didn't capture the vision the way that we expected it to. So, but being not part of those conversations, in pre-production, kind of seeing like, it sounded like a great idea, cool vintage basketball, until it came on set. And then it's like, oh, that wasn't what we had in mind. So it ended up needing to all be fixed in post, with a modern looking basketball, a clean looking basketball, and, having to find that basketball, in stock photo form with the correct, highlights, similar lighting, shadowing that matched the environment of the photo shoot. Thankfully, we got very lucky in the one that we found, but it was the perfect one we ended up finding through my prayers, thank God. But that I was very nervous about, because I was like, okay, how much time is this going to take for each and every image? Like, is this basketball going to work for each and every image? Like, we had certain shots where the basketball was very much in high detail. We did detail shots of the shorts, the guy holding the basketball. And then we had some shots where the basketball wasn't the primary, object in the photo. So it was kind of behind and it was very blurred, but there was that depth of field. So it was a little bit more in focus in the front. And I'm like, okay, Mercedes, this is where you're gonna have to put your skills to work. Like, show what you can do. But that takes a little bit more time. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
It's a great story. You didn't exactly answer the question, but no, it is a great story, and it illustrates it definitely ties back to what we talked to before. And Rob, I believe that you and I talked about this on your podcast episode with me, that even down to some art direction decisions, it is wise to include your post-production teams. And I'll share an example of this at a previous employer of mine. that there was a big effort to elevate the product photography and to introduce some sort of graphic elements into the background. And it turned out that the post-production teams were often having to correct and composite images, and that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. I'm not good at retouching, but it is relatively easy to do when your model or your subject is on a white background. But the minute that you introduce a graphic element to the background, it is an entirely new ballgame, right? And so the importance of getting back to that art direction in post-production, absolutely. Really what my question was about, though, is seeing the same things coming over and over again from your photography teams. Shooting and framing things in a way that you can't apply the correct crop, for instance. And it's like, okay, I can just fix this, I can extend the background, or I can do something like that. It's fast for me to do it, it takes a couple of seconds, but your retouching teams are spending a lot of time fixing mistakes instead of doing the work that they need to be doing. And that is a significant, anybody who has studied process improvement, lean processing, that's a significant waste of time and an absolute non-value add when you could go back to the photography teams or whomever and try to implement some change, right? So Rob, let's talk about, to you, that feedback loop, bringing those things back to the teams. Is it regular check-ins? Is it on an ad hoc basis? How do you practice this at Square, and how do you handle it if you do?
Yeah, so at Square, we are a distributed team, so I'm remote, we're all remote. So those regular check-ins are really important. The constant feedback loop, the constant communication. So we have a few times a week we get the team together, and you know, and they don't always have to be these very serious formal meetings. They can be a little more loose and casual and some social element to it, but ultimately we do get to the to the important feedback of like, like not specifically at Square, but back in e-com, hey, the photographer, this particular photography set, they're outputting the detail crops at a 3:4 ratio. It's supposed to be a 2:3. So no big deal. The retouchers are going in and recropping or extending, like you said. But just so you know, if you could fix that on set, that would shave off 30 seconds from the retouchers' time. And especially in the e-com studio environment, it's all about metrics. Yes, there's the creativity, there's the artistry, but there's the metrics too. And even with the retouchers, it's like Lindsay was saying, you'll get out the stopwatch and let's see how long we could, how quickly we could shoot this. It's the same thing for the retouchers. Okay, the people in the finance team, they've crunched the numbers. On average, we have this much time per image in retouching. So if even though it's no big deal, if it's taking an extra 30 seconds to do that crop, that wasn't accounted for in the financial modeling of the retouching team. So that feedback loop is absolutely important, and it goes both ways too. You uploaded these images in the Adobe RGB color space. They're supposed to be sRGB. Oh, the retouchers will keep that in mind or catch that, or the digital tech output in sRGB. And so yeah, that feedback is really important.
And from the photography side of things, one of my sort of professional tenets that I had is try to minimize the amount of work that you're creating for other people. And one of the ways that I try to do this all the time on set is that if I have to rig something that would need to be removed, I have to rig it anyway. I can at least try to hide my rigging or minimize it in a way that it's easier to retouch out. If I can't, I owe the retoucher an explanation as to why. I'm sorry I couldn't hide this. Is this okay for you to take it out? I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. Angela, you are not off the hook for participating in this conversation. I'm very sorry. You and I were having a great conversation upstairs earlier. We're going to pivot a little bit to onboarding and growing and scaling your retouch teams. Excuse me. And you were telling me a little bit about your process at Essence and how you go about identifying and bringing on new retouch people. I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about that and the importance of finding the right talent, because you need to find retouchers who know how to retouch because you need to spend all your time training them on your process, right? So how do you go about that at Essence?
Well, I start by, we have a talent acquisition partners, obviously, that do a lot of sourcing for us, and I've provided them with guidelines to pick ideal candidates based on training that I know that they would be receiving from either a company background or a schooling background. So with those guidelines, they pull these candidates in for me to review. Once we've selected candidates that have good portfolio, we know that they've received decent training in the past, we send them our own version of a retouching test. So at Essence, we really want, our colors need to be 100% accurate, and sometimes we need to be able to do a little magic and really not a lot of time. So I need to make sure that who we're onboarding, they know Photoshop inside and out. They know their tools, they know what does what and when to use what. So in the test, I have 3 of our most difficult colors to color match in there. I ask that they leave their layers on because I want to see what tools they use to achieve this color correction. There's always different ways, everybody has their different techniques, but there's always some techniques that are more easily implemented into high-paced production. So then after we have the color match, there is a series of images, not necessarily of tasks that we do, but just I want to see if they know Photoshop as well as they're telling me that they do. So for instance, we have one image where I ask that they lengthen the sleeves. On these sleeves, there's zippers, and I want to make sure that they have the eye to detail as well to mask in that zipper that they've just severed by elongating. So you'll be able to see if a person goes directly to liquefy, let's say, to pull it down, or if they go the long way, take the piece off, move it down, and then fill in what they just moved. So once we get to review those tests, then we really know, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. Every so often you'll get a test back that has no layers on it, that you can kind of tell, like, oh, you did this in Lightroom. Okay, that's fine, absolutely fine, but we don't work that way here, so it doesn't work for us. Now, understanding that there's always going to be a certain amount of teaching that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to, tailor their knowledge to your specific needs. There is a threshold that I've established for the reviewing of these tests to make sure that, okay, these are the big ones. These are the ones we absolutely want to make sure that they know. These ones, not that big of a deal. We can train you on these ones. So really it's just to make sure that we're getting the most solid foundation as humanly possible that we can then build off of.
Absolutely, yeah. Finding somebody that you know has the right baseline, because again, you're going to spend a lot of time teaching them how your process works, how Essence's process works, where those things need to go, all of the things that go along with that. However, I want to ask you, Hunter, because at least when I was managing studios and wanting to bring up photographers, I definitely wanted to get people up to speed quickly. I wanted people who knew Capture One, who knew lighting, because I got to spend a lot of time teaching them our process in the studio that is unique to our studio. But I also really, really wanted to develop some talent. Find somebody who maybe is a little bit junior, that I know that I can bring in and I can teach them. And it's really important for us to bring it in order to provide that opportunity so that we can have more diverse perspectives in the studio. So tell me a little bit, Hunter, at Suna, when you're talking about bringing on retouchers, what kinds of things do you look for somebody that maybe is a little bit junior and you see the potential and you want to develop them into a very productive retouching member of your organization?
Yeah, I don't think that one's too hard to answer. I kind of have a bleeding heart, I'm the type of guy who roots for the underdog. And what I really look for in candidates that are interested in joining Suna as photo retouchers, as editors, I just look for a certain sense of passion. And yes, we do send out photo editing tests. We want to make sure that they have those chops. And we can't just hire somebody who doesn't have any Photoshop experience. That would be a disaster. But even if they're a great editor, right? They show promise and they show that they have the foundation to do the job well. Sometimes they come in and they just need a little bit of coaching, and that coaching takes time. We have a few editors that I basically, like, in the first month or so, I was like, dang, I don't know if they're really getting our brand, our style. I mean, they showed promise, but I just don't know. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of patience and working individually with those editors. And we have a lot of editors too, you know. But that's one of the most fulfilling parts of my job, is to work with the editors and sit down with them and have Zoom meetings where we're going over certain editing techniques. And I think it goes back to that collaboration aspect of it, because Photoshop is wide and vast and you can create magic. I mean, some people doing renders in there, you're like, what? This looks real. So there's a lot that you can do, and sharing tips and tricks with one another. Maybe they just didn't know that if you hold shift and click over here that this one action happens. That doesn't mean they're a bad editor. It just means that there's literally a million things that you can do and they just haven't learned that one yet. Collaboration is the key to getting people up to speed, and patience when somebody shows promise and understanding. I think that not only contributes to the success of your post-production department, but the success of your team personally. So yeah.
I am reminded of my good friend Ryan Roberts' session at the Henry Stewart event yesterday, where he described an onboarding process. And to go along with what you're saying, Hunter, it's sometimes is hard, and we feel a lot of pressure in the studio often from leadership to put a hard time frame. How long is it going to take you to get somebody up to speed? And especially after Ryan's very inspiring presentation yesterday, I don't believe there is a time frame necessarily. What you need to see is phased improvement. But it might take somebody a week, and it might take somebody a month. And then at some point, you do have to sometimes make a hard decision. I'm constantly haunted by a photographer that I spent a very long time with, and just at some point realized they were not going to get it, and I had to cut them loose, and it's horrible.
Yeah, and that happens, you know? And
Absolutely.
it's sad when it does, and because you put a lot of time and effort, and you know this person is passionate too. You know they're there because they want to be there. I mean, obviously, if they didn't want to be there, that you'd pick up on that pretty quickly, but I get that, yeah.
Mercedes, tell me a little bit about your philosophy on investing time in other people, helping them get up to speed and developing some talent to help your organization grow and build a solid team.
Yeah, for sure. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you can tell if somebody doesn't want to be there, and you can tell when they really do want to be there, and they strive for excellence, not only to prove themselves to others or the team, or that they have a right to be there, but just for that personal pride in their work. So I think to know that there is that patience element where, do you have to tell them things multiple times, and are they asking questions because they're forgetful, but they still have the skill set where it's like, if they're asking me a question multiple times and they say, I know you told me this already, forgive me for asking, but I still wonder about this. Can you just tell me one more time? I don't mind doing that, because I know that they actually want to know. They want to learn. They want to do the job with excellence. So with anybody that comes on new, at our team, I'm always telling them firsthand, I'm like, please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I know I've had too many experiences where I've been the new person and nobody helped me out. And you know what I mean? You try your best, and then you make mistakes along the way, and then there's no patience for you because they got annoyed when you asked questions and wanted to do it right the first time. So I think communication is a big part of it, just letting them know, please ask questions. I'm not going to get angry at you. I want you to ask questions, and I want to help you along the way and figure out, when Lindsay mentioned in her talk, asking the whys, well, why are you asking this question? What are you really trying to get the answer to, so I can answer in full and give all that I can to you to help you excel in this role.
Yeah, very exciting to hear Lindsay talk about the 5 whys, something that I love so very much. No, Rob, come on. Who's moderating this panel? Please, sir. No, absolutely. Rob, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
So, again, going back to e-com, I understand that there are metrics involved, right? We have to hit numbers and all that. One thing that I really love about Square is we have a very large and supportive and thriving neurodiversity community within the company. I'm a member of that for personal reasons and my family and stuff, and I've learned a lot about myself in the neurodiversity community and about other people and about other ways that other people operate and how other people's brains work. I mean, just physically how their brains work, and everybody's different. And I just want to support what we're all saying up here is that some people just operate differently. And some people get it in a week. Some people just need a little bit more time and patience and guidance. And throughout my career as a retouching manager and building teams and training and I can tell when someone has the potential, but just needs a little bit more time. They're very into it and they're learning, but they just need that little bit of extra care, and they have the potential. So just the only reason I'm saying this is to keep that in mind, that
Absolutely.
there are all different neurotypes.
Yeah.
And if that person has the potential, just give them that little bit of extra patience and care.
Absolutely. Angela, I'm curious, early on in your career, did you have a mentor that kind of helped you get started or learn some things or develop sort of a philosophy around the work that you do? And also, do you make time to mentor other individuals, maybe above and beyond just bringing them up to speed, but just sharing the things that you've learned with them?
Yeah, so when I started, I did not really have a mentor. I learned a lot from YouTube, as most of us do. But because of that, I had to figure a lot of stuff out on my own, which is very much my personality anyways. I make it my business to learn what I need to know. And not everybody works the same, where they're just completely unafraid to just be like, excuse me, coming through, I'd like to learn this, please. It's not the same for everybody. So as I've developed in my career, I've made it my business to learn as much as I absolutely can. And since becoming the manager of the team, I now give those skills back to the team that I'm onboarding. So on my team, we do crash courses. So I send out sheets to my team and say, okay, what's a little bit of a gray zone for you? What do you think that I could help show you and improve your skills on? So they fill out things that they want to know, even if it's just operating actions, creating actions, when is the best time to implement actions, if it's the more difficult lingerie retouching, removing the undergarments from underneath it, just really anything. So then they send me all that in, and I just use the tools the tips and tricks that I've taught myself over the years at Essence, and give them back to them. So we sit down together for a 30-minute, 45-minute chunk of time, however long it takes, and it's just a little crash course. I explain things that helped me learn.
Yeah.
And then we take notes, and then I say, okay, now we're gonna follow up next week. I want you to make an action. I want you to show me it. I want you to use it in the daily. If you find it's really beneficial to you, guess what? You're going to present it to the whole team, and we're going to start using it across the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Best practices.
Yeah, giving everybody that chance to develop themselves and then teach others, it kind of adds a little bit of inspiration, and it gives them a little kick in the butt to develop their own stuff.
Yeah,
to
absolutely. And
figure things out for themselves.
When you can teach somebody the thing that you've been working on is when you know that you've mastered it. When you can teach it to somebody else. And I think that's a super important thing that we should do to develop our teams. How much time do we have before we get into Q&A? Okay. I had one more thing, but we don't have to touch into it. All right, so Q&A for these guys, please. This is your opportunity to talk to the mysterious retouch teams. Ask them how they do it. Can you lengthen these sleeves? I'll start. Can you lengthen these sleeves? Just kidding.
I have a question for Angela. So do you notice a big difference in quality working with multiple retouchers as opposed to AI these days?
A little bit. During the development stage of a newer employee, there's always that fluctuation that you see. But we do end-of-day reviews every single day, and we focus hard on continuous improvement for everybody. So during our reviews, we make a lot of use of Slack, where during the reviews, the person who's in charge of doing the reviewing, which tends to be a senior retoucher, they'll take a screenshot and they'll give a brief description of what this fix is going to be from the review from that day's production. That way we have a record everywhere of visuals for what we don't want and why we don't want it. The following day, we'll always do a morning scrum where we recap those reviews in summary, so that everybody's aware, oh yeah, okay, we forgot to remove the tailoring stitching on this particular brand. And then they're like, okay, got it. And then slowly but surely, over the course of a few weeks, everybody kind of tightens up together. And so now, I mean, just as a for instance, we went through a major onboarding where the team grew from 8 full-timers to 23 over the last 8 months or so. So that's been that big stress test for how to get that continuity of quality. And we found that by doing these, by just always reiterating, and always having a buddy system going on, where we're sharing the central hub of information downward to everybody all at the same time and in the same way, it really helps everybody to learn all at once and then standardize the quality that they're putting out.
Oh, it's so good. Such a good answer.
Additional questions?
Buckle up, guys. I think that's Mark. Get ready.
Thank you. Hi there. Question. Do you guys, when Rob, you were mentioning, hey, if you could have cropped this a little bit differently, it would save time, instead of us doing it. Do you guys ever have regular feedbacks on saying, oh, on set, don't do it because it's so fast for us, versus, oh, do these things on set because it bogs us down? Do you have a regular, so that people know, oh, on, let's just say, sleeves, or the shirts, there's issues, don't worry, we can flatten the shirts, no problem, the wrinkles, or hey, you've got to steam the shirts better because it's slow on this type of fabric, etc. Do you have a back and forth on who should be doing what? So it's either it's intentionally in post and they'll fix it, or no, you guys do it on set because it's bogging us down.
Yeah. Trying to remember some examples. I do remember the answer to your question is yes. There were always ongoing conversations. Like the retouchers would get photos from set for e-com, and like, oh, they gave us all these extra captures, like without the hanger or with it. It's like, and then walking over to set and like, just so you know that we appreciate that, but that's actually something that's really fast for us to remove. Exactly. What we need you to do, what you're not doing, is actually this other thing. So yeah, those conversations happen.
And also because those things aren't always intuitive, especially to like photographers that aren't as experienced in retouching. It depends on the team too. I think it's important to talk about that. Yeah, this is your world. I'm just.
Can I answer that one as well?
What? Oh my god!
I mean, he was so polite. I felt like I had to be polite too. No, but steaming makes all the difference in the world. Like, oh my gosh! And I don't know that, like not being on set directly. I don't know that the stylists are given the praise for what they do to make our jobs so much easier. So like, I always try to let them know, like, you guys are amazing, you rock, I love the way you steamed that last set, was killer. Like, I can tell when a set was stressed and styled and was rushed, and I can tell when there was love put into the role that they played, you know what I mean? And it makes it so much faster in post-production. I remember like once, like when I asked to be involved in more of the conversations as far as styling went, prep in the photography process, we had stylists and we were, experimenting with some junior stylists, and they saw our style guides, how we liked to have our laydown set up, and they put so many pins, like as many pins as they could into the garments to stretch them and pull them and make them perfect according to the style guides of what we already, presented in post-production, and did it perfectly. And with as many pins as they did, because they wanted to do their best job styling, it pulled at so many areas of the garment, and it was such a nightmare, honestly, to fix in post and to even send out to our third parties. So I let them know, hey guys, the the less pins you use, the better, because we can fix those little weird waves in post like in 2 seconds. Whereas when you use all these pins and it's pulling the garment and the threads in all these weird ways, you know, it looks that much more fake in post because you can tell how much work was done to rework these areas that just weren't natural.
Honestly, my favorite thing to do is to go online and look for pin pull marks.
Are you
images.
serious?
Absolutely. Every single person in this room has given that feedback to somebody at some point that they pulled that pin too tight and they need to loosen it up.
Yeah.
Also, Pixel's team, the next flow event needs to have a panel that features stylists, please.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. I think we have time for one last question.
Before that question, I will say the one thing that the retouchers will never say, nah, we didn't need that. We didn't. The one thing
Yeah.
that you'll never hear that is plates. Especially working on lifestyle, like editorial and
Yeah.
in situation. Plates, the back, a clean background, a clean tabletop, countertop.
Yeah, always shoot plates.
Totally.
Hey, so what we seem to be dealing with the most at our studio these days is creative directors who are very assertive, who generally assume that we'll just fix things in post. How do you guys deal with creative directors, deal with discussion and kind of, if you have to have a back and forth, how do you guys typically deal with that kind of situation, especially where it's in an instance where the retoucher is definitely correct technically in the situation, but the creative director just will not shut up?
Oh, I have a little bit of an answer for
Oddly
that.
specific.
Everyone's got it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
everyone's jumping in, yeah. Everyone's ready to tackle it. I have something to say on this too.
We've all had that experience.
But yeah, so I mean, my best suggestion to that, because ultimately, if somebody's pretty set on what their decision is, that's kind of the decision, right? But you know, post-production really is the invisible art, you know, and sometimes you can look at it on set and you kind of imagine it in your head and you're like, no, this is going to be correct, without actually knowing the technical details in post-production, in the editing space. And what I would do is, because I've done this before, and if you're confident that what you're going to be doing in post-production looks better and is going to improve the process, then I would do, you know, at least 2 to 3 examples of what it looks like with the post-process with what you're talking about, you know, in contrast. But it's hard, right? Because if it's the director, it's the director, and you know. But sometimes all people need to see is an example of what you're talking about, and we do that with our clients all the time. If a client's just like, you know, like I'm not sure how this is going to look, well, it's like, well, let's show you how it looks, because I guarantee your opinion's going to be changed, and yeah, it does change opinions.
I would also add to that too. Every project, so if it's a photo shoot, you know, or video shoot, there's a budget tied to that project, and a schedule tied to that project. If there were an infinite budget and an infinite schedule, we could do whatever you want. We can. We don't want to say no. We don't want to block you. We want it to look the best that it could look within the budget and within the time constraints. There are limits. Unfortunately, there are limits. So explaining that in a kind, gentle way helps too.
I'm gonna sum that up in 3 words, and I'd like you to visualize them above my head. Attach a cost.
Yeah.
Time or money, it's going to cost you something. If we look at Ryan's nodding his head because we've lived this very clearly, attach a cost. It's either going to cost you more time or more money if we have to go over on retouching because of some decisions that were made that changed the expectations around it. Attach, say it with me, guys. Attach a cost.
Money or time.
Money or time. Or brownies. Bribes work sometimes.
Yeah, I usually remind our creative director that they might be writing the check, but we're the ones cashing it, so make sure we have the resources to do so.
Spicy. Thank you for that. Is that it?
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap here. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Big round of applause for these guys.